I was standing behind one of those fancy marble columns at my son's wedding reception, pretending to enjoy the music, when I overheard my brand new daughter-in-law whispering to a friend that she planned to have me declared mentally unfit so she could take over my beach house. I didn't flinch. I walked straight to the bar, ordered myself a double whiskey and smiled like everything was just peachy, like I was the picture-perfect mother of the groom. But what came next flipped my world upside down. If you're listening, go ahead and hit subscribe, and drop where you're tuning in from, 'cause this story's about to get real messy. And write in the comments where you are from, I'm very interested. The ballroom at Lakeside Country Club looked like something out of a bridal catalog. White roses on every table, sparkling crystal chandeliers glowing softly over the heads of about 200 guests, and my son Ethan looking sharp as ever in a navy blue tuxedo. I was 63 and by all accounts I should have been the happiest mom in the room. But instead I was hiding behind a column, listening to my new daughter-in-law Brooklyn spill her little plan. "It's really simple," she said to her maid of honor, swirling her champagne glass. "We give it 6 months. A year tops. We document everything. Every time she forgets someone's name, every time she repeats herself, every little moment of confusion. Then we get her evaluated." "Don't you think that's a little extreme?" the friend asked. Brooklyn just laughed. "She's 63 and living alone in that big oceanfront house. It's honestly a kindness. Plus, Ethan deserves that place after everything she's put him through." My whole body went cold. The beach house. The same one my late husband Frank and I bought 3 decades ago. The one where Ethan learned how to surf, where we spent every summer, where Frank got down on one knee and asked me to marry him 45 years ago. I stepped back, heart pounding, and Brooklyn caught my eye from across the room, waving with that same polished grin she always wore. I waved right back, 'cause that's what mothers do at their sons' weddings. We wave, we smile, and we pretend the world hasn't just cracked open beneath our feet. But I'll tell you this, pretending is something I've gotten pretty damn good at over the last 63 years. Ethan walked up beside me, loosening his tie. "Mom, you okay? You look pale." "Just tired, honey. Long day." Brooklyn wants to chat about Christmas. She's got thoughts about changing up some of the old traditions. Of course she does. How sweet. "We'll talk later." He gave my shoulder a little squeeze and walked back to his new bride. I watched him go, remembering the boy who used to build sandcastles next to me on the shore, the one who cried when he scraped his knee, the same little boy who once promised to take care of his mama forever. That little boy was gone now. In his place stood a 32-year-old man who'd spent the past 6 months backing a woman he'd only known for 8, over the mother who'd raised him solo since his dad passed. I turned back to the bar and ordered that double whiskey. The bartender raised a brow. "Rough day?" he asked. "You could say that." I took a sip and let the burn settle in my chest. "Tell me something, do you believe in karma?" He gave a low chuckle. "Ma'am, in my line of work? I believe in just about everything." Good answer. I knocked back the rest of that drink and set the glass down, knowing in my gut that karma was about to get real busy. 3 months before the wedding, Ethan had brought Brooklyn over to my house for the first time. She was exactly the type you'd expect. 28, blonde, that flawless kind of smile you see on infomercials. "Mom, this is Brooklyn," Ethan said, practically glowing. "Brooklyn, this is my mom, Elaine, but everyone calls her Ellie." "Mrs. Walker," she said, wrapping me in one of those too tight hugs. "I've heard so much about you. I couldn't wait to meet the woman who raised such a wonderful man." It all felt so rehearsed, too perfect, like she'd practiced in the mirror on the drive over. "Please call me Ellie. And it's lovely to meet you too, sweetheart." We sat down in the living room and she complimented everything from my old vases to my choice in coffee creamer. Ethan hung on her every word like she was reading scripture. "So how'd you two meet?" I asked. "At the gym." Ethan jumped in before Brooklyn could even open her mouth. She was having a hard time with the weights, so I offered to help. "How romantic," I said, though something about him jumping in like that didn't sit right. Brooklyn laughed. "Oh, he's being modest. I wasn't struggling, I was pretending." I'd been watching him for weeks, trying to figure out how to start a conversation. At least she was honest about being calculating. "And what do you do for work, Brooklyn?" "I used to work in social services, helping families through tough situations. But now I'm shifting into wellness coaching." Social services. Mental health evaluations. Troubled families. That should have been a red flag the size of Texas. Over the next few weeks, Brooklyn became a fixture in my house, dropping by unannounced, reorganizing my kitchen without asking, giving me advice on everything from my rose bushes to my retirement fund. "Ellie," she said one night while washing dishes I never asked her to touch, "Ethan mentioned you handle all your investments yourself. That must be so overwhelming at your age." "Honey, I've been managing finances since before you were even born." "Of course," she smiled. "I just meant with all the new tech and the way the market's shifting, maybe Ethan could take some of that off your plate." Ethan, who never cared a lick about my finances before she showed up. Ethan, who asked me for money 3 separate times this past year just to cover his credit card bills. "I appreciate the concern, but I'm perfectly capable." She smiled again. That same flawless smile. "Oh, absolutely." She always said it like being alone was some kind of sickness. "I just worry about you being all by yourself in that big old house. Like solitude was contagious." But the hardest part wasn't Brooklyn and her fake concern. It was watching Ethan change right in front of me. My son, who used to call me every Sunday without fail, who showed up on Mother's Day with fresh flowers, who'd spent hours helping me clean out his father's study after the funeral. Suddenly he was too swamped to call, too tired for our monthly lunch dates. "Brooklyn says we spend too much time together," he told me once, brushing it off. "She thinks it's not healthy for a guy my age to be so attached to his mom." Attached? That boy had been living in my guest house rent-free for 2 years. But I bit my tongue because that's what moms do. We hope. We wait. And sometimes hope just doesn't cut it. 2 weeks after their little we met at the gym story, Ethan dropped the news. They were moving in together. And not just anywhere. Into the house I bought as a rental investment 3 years back. The same house I let him crash in after his last girlfriend emptied his bank account. "It's gonna be perfect, Mom," he said, pacing my kitchen like he was trying to sell me a timeshare. Brooklyn sat nearby, smiling like always. Calm, sweet, calculated. She loves that house. "It feels like the right place to start our life together." "That's wonderful, honey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "And when were you planning to take over the mortgage payments?" His face felt like I'd slapped him. I mean, we're family. Can't we work something out?" "We've been working something out for 2 years." That's when Brooklyn reached across the table, all soft-voiced and gentle, touching my hand like she was the Virgin Mary. "Ellie, I really hope you don't think I'm pushing Ethan into anything. The last thing I want is to come between you two." "Last thing, huh?" "Of course not, sweetheart. I just treat my properties like business, that's all." "Maybe," she offered sweetly, "we could ease into it. Ethan could start by covering utilities and then when he's ready, maybe chip in on the mortgage." I'd hate for him to feel overwhelmed. Overwhelmed, at 32 by paying bills. "That's very thoughtful of you." Ethan looked relieved like she'd just solved world hunger. "Told you she'd understand. Brooklyn's amazing at finding win-wins." "I'll bet she is." Within a month they moved in and Ethan started referring to it as our house. Brooklyn redecorated like she was HGTV royalty, tossing out anything that didn't match her vision, and replacing it with furniture that looked pricey but probably came from a clearance sale. Suddenly I wasn't getting utility bills anymore. Mortgage payments? Still nothing. When I called Ethan to check in, she picked up. "Hey Ellie. Ethan's in the shower. Everything okay?" "Just checking on the house payments we talked about." "Right, we've been meaning to chat about that. Moving costs were higher than we expected and with my business shift, funds are a little tight. We're hoping to get started next month." Like they were a married couple of 20 years. Not 2 strangers who met at the gym 4 months ago. Of course. Next month is fine. But next month came and went. So did the one after that. One day I drove past the house and saw a shiny new BMW in the driveway. Ethan's old beat-up Honda was gone. I called him that night. "Mom. What's up?" "Nice car, Ethan." Silence. How'd you know about that?" "I still own the house, remember? Sometimes I check on it. It's my investment." "Kinda weird, Mom." "Weird? Checking on my own property was weird now?" Brooklyn needed a dependable car for her new business. "We got a good deal." "That's great. Speaking of deals, any idea when you'll be paying into the mortgage?" "Look, Mom, we need to talk." Brooklyn thinks. "Well, we both think you're being a little controlling about money." "Controlling? Expecting a grown man to pay his own way?" "I see. You sort of use the house to control us. Like you're holding it over our heads." Brooklyn says that's not healthy family dynamics. Brooklyn says. Everything was Brooklyn says. You're right, Ethan. Let's talk about healthy family dynamics. I'm glad you're open to feedback. Brooklyn's really good at this stuff. It's what she did for a living. Oh, I was starting to get a very clear picture of what she did for a living. That call happened on a Tuesday. By Friday, I was sitting in my attorney's office. Ellie, are you sure about this? Frank Weston had been our family lawyer for over 15 years. He helped me settle Hank's will, file insurance, even draft Ethan's original rental agreement. I'm sure. Both properties? Yes. The beach house in Sandport and the rental on Sycamore Street. Frank leaned back in his chair, clearly weighing his words. Can I ask what brought this on? I could have told him about Brooklyn's plan to have me declared unfit, about the unpaid bills, the disrespect, the BMW, but I didn't. I'm 63 years old, Frank. It's time to simplify my finances. Those are significant assets. The beach house alone is worth over $2 million. That's why I want the sales done properly and quietly. He nodded. I assume Ethan doesn't know? Ethan assumes a lot. That's part of the issue. He'll need to be notified eventually. Not unless I die. Until then, he doesn't need to know a thing. I own both properties outright. Legally, I can do whatever I want. That's true, Frank agreed. But, you've thought about the family fallout? I've thought about Brooklyn laughing as she plotted to have me committed. I've thought about Ethan calling me controlling just for expecting him to contribute. I've thought about raising a son for 32 years who now sees me as an obstacle instead of a blessing. I looked him dead in the eye. Frank, what do you think of people who bite the hand that feeds them? He smirked. I think they shouldn't be shocked when that hand stops feeding them. Exactly. How long until both properties are sold? If we price them fairly and you're not trying to squeeze every dollar out, we could close both in under 60 days. Perfect. Price them to move. No fuss, no drama. He scribbled some notes. Where do you want the money sent? You account. Different bank. I'll get you the details next week. And Ethan? What about him? When will you tell him? I paused, thinking about the exact moment it would hit him and how satisfying that silence would be. When he needs to know. Frank lifted an eyebrow but didn't press it. He knew me well enough by now. One last thing, Frank. I need you to look into something for me. Of course. Brooklyn Adams. 28 years old. Used to work in social services. I want everything, jobs, background, lawsuits, whatever you can dig up. Call it motherly instinct. He nodded, jotting it down. I'll have something by next week. I walked out of that office feeling lighter than I had in a long time. Not because I was letting go of 2 houses. Those would sting, especially the beach place. But because I'd finally stopped waiting for things to fix themselves. Brooklyn thought she could play chess with a helpless old lady. Well, she just sat down at the wrong damn board. She was about to learn that I wasn't nearly as helpless as she thought. The call came early Thursday morning, sometime in October, and Ethan's voice sounded tight and panicked, pitched just a little higher than usual. Mom, we need to talk. Now. I smiled to myself. Good morning to you too, sweetheart. How are you? He cut me off. Can you come over? Brooklyn's at work. We need to talk privately. Privately, meaning without her hovering over the conversation. Sure, I'll be there soon. I drove over to Sycamore Street slowly, taking in the neighborhood, savoring what I knew would be my very last visit to that house while it still had my name on the deed. The BMW was gone, but in its place sat Ethan's new pickup truck, another shiny toy he couldn't afford. He opened the door before I even knocked. His hair was a mess and his shirt looked like he'd slept in it. We got a notice, he blurted out. The house is being sold. We have to be out in 30 days. That's odd, I said, stepping inside like nothing was wrong. Who's selling it? Very funny, Mom. You know exactly who's selling it. The living room had changed again. Brooklyn had turned everything white and gray. Like a hospital. I'm not sure I understand your tone, Ethan. Cut the act. You sold our house. I sold my house. Big difference. He stared at me like I'd grown horns. This is our home. We've been living here for months. We've built a life here. On my dime, I reminded him. You were going to start paying the mortgage, remember? You just needed more time. 6 months wasn't enough. We had the wedding, Brooklyn's business launch, the cars. Cars? Plural. I raised an eyebrow. How many do two people need? Ethan ran both hands through his hair. That's not the point. You can't just kick us out without warning. Actually, I can. I pulled a folded paper out of my purse. Check your lease agreement. What lease? This one. You signed it when you moved in. 30 days notice per the agreement. Frank Weston had you sign it, remember? He paled as he scanned the paper. I thought this was just a formality. All contracts are formalities until someone breaks them. We didn't break anything. You stopped paying rent after the first month, Ethan. Then you bought luxury vehicles while ignoring your bills. And according to what I've heard, Brooklyn's been telling people she owns this house. I made that part up. But the way his eyes flinched, it landed. She was just, people ask questions when you're not on the deed. She was avoiding awkward conversations. By lying, I said calmly. By protecting our privacy. I slipped the lease back into my purse. So where is Brooklyn today? At her new office, he mumbled. She's launching her wellness coaching business. With what money? She has investors. Do these investors know she's been living rent-free for half a year? You're being ridiculous, Mom. We're family. Family helps each other. That's true. So tell me, when's the last time you helped me? I help you all the time. We have dinner together, I cook. You eat, Ethan. You've never cooked for me. And don't even get me started on technology. You've never fixed anything. I offer emotional support. By calling me controlling? By canceling our lunches? By filtering my calls through your girlfriend. He slumped onto the couch, Brooklyn's carefully curated, blinding white couch. This isn't fair, Mom. We're getting married. We need stability. Then go get jobs that provide it. We have jobs. Brooklyn has a startup with mystery backers and you have a part-time consulting gig that barely pays for that truck. That's not employment, honey. That's wishful thinking. So now you're punishing us for not being rich enough? The words stung. Not because they were true but because they were so completely backwards. No, Ethan. I'm protecting myself. From people who treat me like an ATM instead of a human being. He opened his mouth to argue then shut it again. When's the last time you called just to ask how I was? Not for money, not to complain. Just to check in. He had no answer. You'll figure it out. You're resourceful when you have to be. I turned to leave then paused at the door. Oh, and Ethan, the beach house is sold too. Just in case Brooklyn was banking on it for her early retirement. He called after me but I didn't look back. I didn't hear from Ethan for 3 weeks. And then Brooklyn called. Ellie, we need to talk. No greeting. No sweet tone. Just blunt. Well, hello to you too, Brooklyn. How are you settling into your new place? We're staying with my sister for now. This situation is unacceptable. I'm sorry to hear that. Don't play dumb. You know what you've done. I sold 2 properties that I legally own. Not sure why that bothers you. Those were David's inheritance. Ethan's inheritance, I corrected, will be whatever I leave behind when I die. I'm still alive. So he gets nothing right now. You can't just cut your son out because he fell in love. This isn't about love. It's about choosing a manipulative opportunist over his own mother. Silence. Then she snapped, you bitter old woman. There was the real Brooklyn finally out. Oh, I may be old but I'm not bitter. Bitter folks sit around whining. I take action. Ethan deserves better than this. You're absolutely right. He deserves a mother who raised him to be grateful and independent. I clearly failed on both fronts. This isn't over, Ellie. Oh, I think it is. Unless there's something else. She hesitated. Actually, yes. Ethan's been struggling. Ever since you kicked us out, he's been forgetful, disoriented, moody. Yesterday, he forgot how to get to the grocery store we've used for years. My chest went tight. That's concerning. Has he seen a doctor? I think the whole family needs professional help. This toxic dynamic between you two, it's not healthy. The way you isolate him, the financial manipulation, it's textbook emotional abuse. Is it now? This is what I do for a living. I know the signs. And what do you suggest? Family therapy. Someone who specializes in elder care and dysfunction. Elder care. Like I was some senile patient in a nursing home. That's very thoughtful of you, Brooklyn. I'll consider it. Good. I'll send you some referrals. Therapists who understand aging and family strain. I'm sure you will. After I hung up, I sat quietly in my kitchen thinking about chess and strategies. Brooklyn was moving her pieces. Confused son, evil mother, elder abuse, emotional trauma. It was a solid setup. But she'd made a key mistake. She'd warned me. Gave away her hand. The intervention came that following Tuesday morning. I was making coffee when I heard cars pulling into my driveway. Through the window I spotted Ethan's truck, a sedan I didn't recognize and a white van. Then came the doorbell. Ethan stood on my front porch with Brooklyn, a woman in scrubs and a man in a navy suit. "Mom, we need to talk," he said stiffly. I opened the door slowly and smiled. "Good morning, everyone." Quite the welcome party for a Tuesday. The man in the suit stepped forward first. "Mrs. Walker, I'm Dr. Franklin from Rose Hill Behavioral Health Center. Your family has expressed some concerns about your well-being." "How very thoughtful of them," I replied. Brooklyn stepped in closer, her tone syrupy. "Ellie, we're doing this because we love you." Then she looked at Dr. Franklin. "Ethan's told him about some of the concerning behaviors you've shown recently." Ethan wouldn't meet my eyes. "The property sales, Mom. Selling major assets so suddenly. It didn't make any sense." "And this worries you because?" I asked. "Because it's not normal," he burst out. "You sold both houses and left us homeless. That's not how a rational person acts." Dr. Franklin checked his clipboard. "Mrs. Walker, are you taking any medications?" "Just the usual vitamins." "Any changes in sleep, appetite, or mood?" "I sleep fine. I eat well. And honestly, my mood's been better than it has in years." He nodded. "Your son says you've cut off your family, isolated yourself." "I've just become selective about who I let waste my time." The woman in scrubs stepped forward with a patient smile. "Mrs. Walker, I'm Nurse Patricia. Sometimes as we age, we can't always recognize when our behavior shifts." "How old are you, Patricia?" I asked. "That's not really. I'm 63. You?" 34. "So you're here to explain aging to someone who's been at it 3 decades longer than you?" Dr. Franklin cleared his throat. "Mrs. Walker, your family's provided documentation. Examples of forgetfulness, confusion, impulsive financial moves." "What documentation?" I asked. Brooklyn took out her phone. "I've recorded some of our conversations, Ellie. Things you've said that really weren't rational. May I hear those recordings?" "This isn't a courtroom, Mom," Ethan said. "We're trying to help you." "By showing up at my house with strangers and threatening to lock me away?" Brooklyn interrupted. "Dr. Franklin can evaluate you, make sure you're safe." "Safe from what?" I asked. "From yourself. From making choices that harm you and the people who care about you." I turned to my son. My little boy who used to hide under the covers during thunderstorms, who cried when I dropped him off at kindergarten, who once said I was his best friend. "Ethan, look at me." He finally did. "Do you really believe I'm mentally unstable?" "I think you need help, Mom. And I trust Brooklyn knows how to get it." I exhaled slowly and turned back to Dr. Franklin. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "A 72-hour psychiatric evaluation. We'd run tests, assess your cognition and emotional state, and then determine a treatment plan." "And if I say no?" "Your family can petition for an emergency hold if they believe you're a risk to yourself or others." I looked at each of them. Brooklyn's expression was polished but firm. Ethan looked miserable but locked in. Dr. Franklin looked like he was already planning lunch. "How much does this evaluation cost?" "Insurance typically. I don't have mental health coverage." "So who's paying for this?" Ethan shifted his weight awkwardly. "We'll figure it out, Mom." "With what money? You can't even afford your own rent." Brooklyn cut in quickly. "The important thing is getting you help." "Help, of course. That someone else would be billed for." I paused. "Fine. Let me go pack a bag." Ethan exhaled in relief. "Thank you, Mom. You're doing the right thing." "I'm sure I am, sweetheart." I went upstairs, pulled out my suitcase, and while I tossed in clothes, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to Frank. "It's happening," I said. "Are you absolutely sure?" "Positive. You remember the plan. If I don't reach out in a week, move forward on everything." "Understood." The second call was to my bank. "I need access to my safe deposit box." "Yes, I know visiting hours." This is an emergency. The third call was to someone I doubted Brooklyn even knew existed. Someone very interested in our last conversation about her background. Detective Carter? This is Ellie Walker. I think it's time we talk about your half-sister. The Rose Hill facility looked exactly how you'd expect. Cold, too clean, and full of pastel posters with meaningless affirmations. Dr. Franklin handed me over to a new doctor, Dr. Patricia Summers. She looked like she'd just finished her residency. Mrs. Walker, I'll be conducting your evaluation. Your family has concerns about some changes in behavior. My family's concerned about losing their free ride. She made a note. Can you tell me about your relationship with your son? Which version? The boy I raised or the grown man trying to have me committed? You sound angry. Wouldn't you be? Anger can indicate deeper issues, especially at your age. Dr. Summers, how long have you been doing this? 5 years. How many financial disputes have you seen, disguised as mental health emergencies? I'm not sure I follow. I think you do. She scribbled again. Let's try some assessments. What year is it? 2025. Who's the president? Unfortunately, Donald Trump. And do you know where you are? At a place where my son's girlfriend is trying to get legal control of my life. Mrs. Walker, these are paranoid thoughts. Dr. Summers, have you looked into Brooklyn Adams' work history? No. She used to work in adult protective services. Evaluating seniors. She knows exactly how to play this game. Her pen froze mid-word. How do you know that? As I'm not paranoid. I'm prepared. For the next 2 days I did their test. Memory checks, psychological evaluations, every form and question they threw at me, I answered it all. And while I was stuck in that sterile place I made allies. One of the nurses, Angela, had been working there 15 years. She'd seen everything. One evening while she took my blood pressure she leaned in and said, "Sweetheart, I've seen this before. Pretty young woman, older guy with some money, and suddenly the family's all concerned." How does it usually end? I asked. Depends how sharp the old lady is. Most get medicated into submission. Their property goes up for sale. End of story. She smiled slightly. But sometimes they outsmart the whole pack. And what would that smart woman do? She'd document everything. Record conversations. Request her medical files. Make sure someone on the outside knew the truth. Good advice. I've still got 30 years till retirement, Angela said. I've seen so much I can't fix. But now and then I get to help someone fix it themselves. On the third day, Angela handed me a large envelope. Legal mail for you. Inside was everything Frank had promised. Brooklyn's employment record, including 3 jobs that ended in elder abuse accusations, 2 civil cases that got quietly settled, and a criminal record. 1 count of fraud in Nevada 5 years back. On top was a handwritten note from Detective Carter. Mrs. Walker, Brooklyn is my half-sister. I've been trying to build a case for years. Your situation might be the key. Call me when you're out. I folded the paperwork and handed it to Angela. Would you mind holding on to this for me? Hypothetically, she said, tucking it away. When should I return it? Tomorrow morning. I've got a hunch I'll be walking out of here competent. Angela grinned. Funny how that works. Dr. Summers gave me the final report with a tight expression. Mrs. Walker, I've completed your evaluation. You're under stress and your decisions have raised eyebrows, but there is no evidence of cognitive decline or psychiatric illness. Well, I'll be. That said, I'd still recommend family counseling. There's clearly tension between you and your son. You don't say. Your son and Brooklyn are here to take you home. Home. The house Brooklyn probably thought would be hers by now. Ethan hugged me in the lobby, though it felt stiff and staged. We were so worried, Mom. I'm really glad you're okay. Were you? Brooklyn smiled beside him, all sugar again. Welcome back, Ellie. I hope you're feeling better. Much better. Thank you. I climbed into Ethan's truck and from the front seat, Brooklyn turned around to look me dead in the eye. Ellie, Brooklyn said with that same syrupy tone as she turned around in the passenger seat. I think we all learned something from this. Communication really is everything in a family. I smiled. I couldn't agree more. Actually, I was thinking, why don't we have dinner tonight? Clean slate. That sounds lovely, she replied. Come by my house around 7, I offered. Ethan glanced sideways at her. Are you sure you're up for cooking? Oh, I won't be cooking, I said sweetly. I'm ordering from that new place downtown. Great, Brooklyn chirped. We'll bring wine. Perfect. They dropped me off with hugs and empty promises, waving from the car like we hadn't just come back from a psychiatric evaluation. I stood on the porch, waved until they were out of sight, and then went inside to start making calls. First, I rang Detective Carter. I'm out. When can we meet? How about now, he said. I'll bring backup. The second call went to Frank. Execute everything. Tonight. You're sure? No hesitation. And Frank, make sure the process server knows to be at my house by 7. The third call was to Angela at Rose Hill. I need all my records. Every note, every test result, every single file. Already sealed? Thank you. Last, I called the catering company. Dinner for 8. Delivered at 6:30. I want it to look impressive. Don't hold back, I'll cover whatever it costs. I spent the afternoon organizing paperwork, reviewing records, and prepping the house. By 6:30 the food had arrived, enough to feed a dozen people and then some. At 6:45, 3 unmarked cars pulled into my driveway, Detective Carter and 2 officers, right on schedule. At 7 o'clock sharp the doorbell rang. I opened it slowly. Come in, I called out. There are some folks I'd like you to meet. The second Brooklyn saw her half-brother, her smile dropped. Her face froze. Hello, Jess, Carter said smoothly. Been a while. Ethan looked around, confused. Mom, what is going on? Who are these people? Ethan, I said calmly, this is Detective Carter, Brooklyn's half-brother. Her mask cracked immediately. Danny, what are you doing here? Doing my job, he said. Then he looked at me. Mrs. Walker, want to explain it, or should I? I've got it, I said, turning back to Ethan. Brooklyn's done this before. 3 times that we know of. She targets men with wealthy family connections, gets them to cut off their families, then engineers a mental health crisis to gain legal control of their assets. That's absurd, Ethan said, but he didn't sound like he believed it. Is it? I asked. Detective. Carter nodded. Brooklyn Adams, also known as Jessica Wells and Jessica Martinez, has been investigated in 3 states for elder fraud. 5 years ago she was convicted in Nevada, scammed an elderly man out of his pension. That man died shortly after. Ethan turned to Brooklyn, stunned. Is that true? It's complicated, she said quietly. That case was, there were misunderstandings. What about Margaret Thornfield in Arizona? Carter continued. 83 years old. Declared incompetent after her nephew's girlfriend claimed she was unfit. Signed over her estate, then died in a facility 3 months later. That was different, Brooklyn whispered. Or Harold Brennan, Colorado. 76. Also isolated. Also committed. Still in the facility, by the way. Been 2 years. Ethan dropped onto the couch like he'd been punched. This can't be real. I'm afraid it is, I said gently, sitting beside him. That engagement ring she's wearing? It belonged to Margaret Thornfield. Brooklyn kept it as a souvenir. Brooklyn's hand instinctively covered the ring. You don't get it. I was helping those people, protecting them. By draining their accounts. By putting them in facilities where they died alone while you lived off their money. Ethan stared at the ring, then at the woman he thought he knew. How long have you been planning this? Planning what? She shot back. David, you're letting your mother twist this. She dug up my past, she's been manipulating you. She did her research, I said. Detective. Carter stepped forward. We found files. On you, Mrs. Walker. On your late husband. On Ethan's job, your financials, real estate. You were being studied. Ethan stood up slowly, his voice shaking. You targeted me. This whole relationship, you targeted my family. Ethan, please. I love you. No, he said quietly. You love what I stood to inherit. That's not true. Detective Carter moved in. Brooklyn Adams, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, falsifying medical documents, and elder abuse. As he read her rights, Brooklyn didn't even flinch until the last moment. Then she turned on me. You think you've won, she snapped. Your son will never forgive you for this. You destroyed his life just to prove you're smarter than me. No, I said softly. I saved his life and mine. Ethan didn't speak as they led her out. He just stared after her, broken and silent. Once the police cars disappeared down the street, he turned back to me, his voice hoarse. Mom, I'm so sorry. I nodded gently. I know you are, sweetheart. How can you ever forgive me? I sat there really thinking it through. About trust. About betrayal. About what love actually cost. Ethan, I said, I forgave you the moment you saw the truth. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. This hurt. I understand. Do you? I asked, watching his face. Because I need to know you understand how close we came to losing everything. Not just money, everything. His eyes filled with tears. She almost destroyed us. Yes. And you helped her. I thought I was protecting her from you. He made me believe it. She made me think you were the problem. That's what people like Brooklyn do, I said. They're experts at it. She made me believe, Ethan whispered. God, Mom. She really made me believe you were the problem. I nodded slowly. That's what people like Brooklyn do. They're professionals at manipulation. He looked at me, broken and vulnerable. How do we fix this? I really looked at my son then. Truly looked at him for the first time in what felt like months. His face was different. Older. More tired. Like he'd been carrying a heavy weight and was only now starting to set it down. We start over, I said softly. Slowly. With honesty. And Ethan, the houses are sold. I'm keeping the money. He winced but then nodded. I deserve that. Yes, you do, I said. But Ethan, when you're ready to rebuild your life, your real life, not that fantasy Brooklyn sold you, I'll be here. Because no matter what, you're still my son. And mothers don't give up on their children, even when their children give up on them. 6 months later, I was sitting on the deck of my new beachfront condo, glass of wine in hand, watching the Pacific turn gold and pink as the sun slipped beneath the horizon. The condo was smaller than the house I'd sold, sure, but it was peaceful and it was mine. That morning Ethan had called. Real news this time. He'd landed a full-time job complete with a regular paycheck and health insurance. He'd moved into a modest apartment, was seeing a therapist, and had started slowly paying down the debt Brooklyn had racked up in his name. I'm trying, Mom, he said. I'm really trying. I know you are, I told him. And I'm proud of you. We had dinner once a month now. At first it had been awkward, quiet, uncertain. But it was getting easier. Rebuilding trust takes time. But we were doing the work. Brooklyn, Jessica, had been sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. Detective Carter told me it should have been more, but plea bargains were part of the system. She was ordered to pay restitution to her victims, though most would never see their money again. Still, there were wins. Like hearing that Harold Brennan had finally been released from his facility and reunited with his family. Justice doesn't always come quickly, but sometimes it comes. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Walker, this is Sarah Chin. Detective Carter gave me your number. I think my stepmother might be doing to my father what Jessica did to you. Can we talk? I smiled, set my wine down and typed back. Of course. When would you like to meet? People sometimes ask if I regret how it all unfolded. If I wish I'd done things differently, been more forgiving, more patient, more understanding. My answer is simple. No. This past year taught me something I wish I'd learned sooner. Being a mother doesn't mean being a doormat. Loving your child doesn't mean letting yourself be mistreated. And being 63 sure as hell doesn't mean being powerless. Brooklyn had seen me as an easy target. A lonely widow desperate to stay close to her son. She was half right. I was a widow. And I do love my son. But I wasn't lonely. And I wasn't easy. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I raised my glass in a quiet toast. To the mothers who've learned the difference between love and enabling. To the children who find their way back home. And to second chances, because sometimes they come dressed up as endings. Tomorrow I'd meet with Sarah and help her protect her father from the woman trying to steal his life. Next week I'd have dinner with Ethan and we'd keep rebuilding what Brooklyn tried to destroy. And tonight I'd sit on my deck, breathe in the ocean air, and enjoy the peace that comes from knowing exactly who I am and what I'm worth. Being a mother means loving without condition. But it also means knowing when to stop feeding the hand that bites you. Some lessons, they're worth the price. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you've got a story to tell, leave it in the comments. Your voice matters.